happy to have you here today. I'm happy to welcome to our third Saturday presentation. Looks like we've got some real interest in our brand and cattle ranching information. So today I'm going to introduce you to our presenters. First of all, how many of you have silenced your phones? All of you do that, please. And you're not scrambling and we're not annoying. So today we have, I call him President Lyman Hafen, sorry, Lyman Hafen, who grew up surrounded by cowboys from Utah and Dixie, as well as southern Nevada and the Strip. His great-grandfather began ranching in a 12-acre valley northwest of St. George in 1869. So that's a long history. So he's been roving and ranching his whole life. And in numerous books, he participated successfully in 6 rodeo events.
Okay, can you hear me better now? I try to talk loud. So he's written numerous books, and he's married to Debbie Fry, his high school sweetheart. So please help me welcome Lyman Hafen.
Thank you.
He has a companion here to help him, and I'll let him introduce her when he's ready. Okay?
Well, and I will right off the bat introduce Doreen Layton, who is here with me as well. She is a true cowgirl. I'm a desk jockey. She's a true cowgirl, and she and her husband Steve run an amazing ranching operation out on the Strip. Is it Mud Springs? It's directly south of Black Rock Mountain. Goes forever, doesn't it? It's an amazing ranch that they have out there. And in a little bit, Lorraine's going to share some of the heritage brands of the area and add some icing on the cake here for me today. So I appreciate you, Lorraine, being here. And when you talk about cowboys and cowgirls and ranching, we do. You can walk up and down the streets of St. George and not know that you're passing a real cowboy, a real cowgirl, a true rancher, someone who makes their living as a rancher still here in this region. That's what's so great about this town. There's so much. You just don't know who you're passing on the street. You might be passing some retired MIT professor, or you might be passing one of the greatest legendary cowboys of the American West, and everything in between. You might be passing the founder of the largest commuter airline in the world, and it just goes on and on. But here we are in this awesome building, and my cousin Lana is here today. I want to raise your hand, Lana. We're first cousins. Our grandmother is Orilla Woods Hafen, and she was one of the original group that when this building was built in 1930, whatever, 38, part of the Daughters of the Utah Pioneers. She's not a president on the wall back there, but she was one of the wonderful, amazing women that brought all this together. And as Lana and I were growing up, although Lana grew up in northern Utah, we always met in this room the night after Christmas. And so our family, everyone who was in town, from my great-grandfather John Hafen's family down, because Grandma had some pull here in this building, it was not Christmas. It was not Christmas Eve. It was not the night of Christmas. It was the day after Christmas on that evening. And usually there were enough of the family together that we had a lot more people together than there are right now in this room. And those are really fond memories. And as I walked in today, I know that the configuration has changed over the years, but this is a very, very special place to us. And I just wanted to pay tribute to my dear grandma today as well. So this is an interesting topic, and Nancy only gave me 9 months to prepare for this. I think you called me last spring. But I'm the way I operate is I start to get ready about a week before, and so I've known about this for 9 months. I'm not making excuses, because what I'm sharing with you today comes right out of my DNA. I didn't need to do a lot of major preparation, because I wanted to share with you feelings and thoughts, and hopefully entertaining, but also hopefully educational. And then also I want to preface right at the beginning that I know that there are people in this room that know even more about this than I do, and I don't claim to be an expert. I only claim to be someone who has experienced so much of this. And I thought it might be fun at the outset, because my dad gave me, it's a photocopy of an old brand book, kind of the St. George area brand book. And it's just photocopies of the pages, but here's what the pages look like. And it has the name of the brand holder, Charles Segmiller, and then it has the brand. You can see a cross with a V or whatever it is, and then it documents which side of the animal the brand is on which part of the animal, and then it indicates what the earmark is for that rancher. And there are dozens and dozens in here. But when I got to the last page, I thought it was really fun to consider the fact that there is a brand in here for H.A. McQuarrie, St. George, Utah. And my dad's recollection is that H.A. McQuarrie was the father of Hortense, for whom this building is named, for whom the funding, through whom the funding for this building came in the 1930s. Dad was quick to say, I don't think they made their fortune through ranching, but they did have a ranch, and he thought it was up in the Diamond Valley area that Mr. McQuarrie operated. But it's kind of fun to think, maybe Lorene, you can help me with this. The brand, the McQuarrie brand, are these all dry? I didn't test them. The McQuarrie brand is a var with 1, 2, 3, 4 posts. I don't know what the definition of that brand would be, but that was the McQuarrie brand. And it's a brand that my dad would probably approve of, because it's very simple and it's straight. Everything is straight on it. You could use it with, or you could apply it with one bar and not have to use a stamp brand. But it was I'd never really seen a brand like that before. And it struck me that it might be fun today, because many of you either have or have in your heritage a brand. And I wondered if any of you, if you'd like to come up and put it on this board. Does anyone have one? Sunburst? Will you come put it on the board? All right, thank you. Sunburst, awesome. And that where is that brand still used today?
Yeah, that's brand my son uses with the cattle.
And that's where?
That's in Idaho and Pueblo, northern Utah,
Awesome,
mainly the Bear Lake Valley.
awesome. Any others that you want to put up here?
I don't know if it's the brand, I just know the name. It's
Square W.
Square W.
Do I do a square and then a W inside it? Okay, we'll just imagine it. And yes,
My grandpa's brand is just a letter A.
A. All right. And that, again, my dad would say that's a good brand. It's an easy one to put on, easy to read.
There's a symbol. Where's that?
Do you know where it's from?
Well, yeah, Arnold MacArthur here at St.
Oh, okay. It's probably in this book. We'll have to look. We'll have to look. We won't take the time right at this moment. So Arnold MacArthur. That's awesome. Any others?
Flying W.
Flying W.
The W over the line.
Does it have wings on the W?
No,
That's not that kind of flying.
it's over a straight line.
Over a straight line. Is that close enough? All right. I thought it might be fun. If I were maybe dreaming up a brand today, I might use H for my last name. And Dad would probably say, that's a great brand. Simple, straight lines, et cetera, et cetera. But then I might want to start to get more creative, and I might want to make it a walking H. Or I might want to make it a flying H. Or I might want to make it a rocking H. I'm losing everything. Or I might want to make it a lazy H. Or I could just go completely crazy and make it a rocking, walking, flying, lazy H. Rocking, walking, flying, lazy H. Nobody would do that, but that's just kind of fun when you think about it. And Lorraine's going to be able to show us some really awesome things here in a minute. But before I kind of jump into the just ranching and the ranching culture, I thought it might be fun to look at those. The brand that I grew up with and still is being used is an H, but it has a backward E for my Uncle Eldon and a K for my dad, Kelton. And it's the EHK brand, and that brand is still used at our ranch in Nevada. My brother still runs cattle, and I have cousins who run some cattle. And just for the record, I own 4 cows. I used to own 5. My brother runs my herd with his herd. And so I can at least say, even though I'm a desk jockey, I can at least say, yeah, I have cows. But the problem was I started with 5 a few years ago, and I lost one of my cows died a couple of years ago. I lost 20% of my herd. Right there. Oh. Lorene, what is a percentage loss that that ranchers deal with?
I have no idea. What we don't know, we don't know.
Yeah, but ranchers lose a cow or two, depending on how big a herd they have. They lose some cows every year to sickness, disease, calving. Yeah. So when you only have 5 cows, you lose one, you lose 20% of your capital, just like that. But anyway, and then maybe just tearing off from that, the whole idea of ranching in this area is cow-calf operations. So ranchers here generally have private property that they own, and they have public land that they grazing leases, grazing rights that they use with the BLM and the Forest Service, and they have X number of mother cows, and they have some bulls, and they run those cows, and generally in the summertime they're in the higher country, and in the wintertime they're in the lower country. And as you know, in this geographical area we have a lot of great high country and we have a lot of great low country. The calves are born in the spring, and by fall, by this time of year, they've all been weaned and sold. And when they're sold, they go to feedlots, some all over the country. But the ranchers here have their cows, their bulls, and they raise X number of calves a year, and they sell those calves, and the income off those calves is their livelihood. Most of the people who have cattle in this area also have other sources of income. But that's...
So one thing, we do not sell our cows. We feed her because we have nothing better to do.
So you take the next step.
And we feed them and then sell them in the spring.
So that you still have your calves that were born last spring. You will sell them in the spring. They'll be ready at that point to go on to another feedlot or to... Okay. And then eventually they end up on our tables. At least on mine. I'm a meat eater. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I love a good steak. And it's interesting nowadays. Lorene, maybe what kind of cattle do you run?
Well, we started out with Bramer cross cattle because we're so far out. They had to be able to get out and make a living before they would make it. And through the years, we've had a different breed. But they started out lean, green, Bramer.
When she says Bramer, she means what many of you would say Brahma or whatever, but we call them Bramers. And no, that's fine. I'm the translator here. I'm the translator at a loss for words. But anyway, so the cattle that the Laytons run, they're cattle that can thrive on the kind of range that they have. And a lot of the cattle, more and more of the cattle over the years, when I was growing up, most of the cattle in this area were Hereford cattle. Some of the bigger operators, like the Gardners and the Atkins and the Esplins, they brought Hereford cattle into this area. And I think they probably still do run a lot of Hereford cattle. And it's interesting because Hereford, obviously, that's an English breed, and they were bred on those amazing green pastures in England, and then they come to this desert place. But the Herefords actually do well here and have done well, continue to do well. But more and more of those operators are going now to the Angus, the Black Angus, which from a marketing standpoint is a big thing now. And Black Angus, I mean, I sold 4 calves this year. 3 of them were Black Angus and 1 wasn't. And the one that wasn't, I got 2/3 the value out of that calf that I did my Black Angus. I'm divulging my whole ranching business to you. It doesn't take long to do that, especially when I have a brother who does all the heavy lifting. But anyway, over the years, so many families in this area have made their livelihood or a substantial part of their livelihood through ranching, and continue to do so, even in spite of a lot of challenges and roadblocks along the way. But it's amazing that this culture of ranching continues, and it continues. I see it continuing. I mean, my brother is a full-time rancher. He runs our herd, but he also runs a herd for a local businessman who's very well-to-do, but owns a lot of cattle and owns a lot of range rights in Nevada and out on the Tule Desert for winter. And so my brother can actually make his living as a full-time rancher. And so what you have a lot of businessmen and women, because I mean the cowgirls are a huge part of it all. In fact, my brother's wife, I don't think he could do what he does without her, and she's horseback every day with him. They continue this tradition, this culture, and a lot of it is out of love and passion for something. The economic part of it is still there, and especially in a year like this one, where we had a lot of rain and we had relatively good prices this year. Most of the ranchers and the cattle people kind of live for years like this one, and pray for years like this one. But so many of those years are not like this one. And so it goes in cycles, and it's a challenge, and it's a tough way to make a living, but it's also, for those who do it, it's the only way that they would want to do it. And I can see that moving into future generations as well. But again, it will take more and more. It'll take more and more other income sources and resources for people to continue to do what they're doing. The part of this, the great thing about this area is that it allows us to utilize a resource here that would otherwise go unused. And there's grass on those desert ranges in the summertime, and there's grass in the mountains, in the grass on the summer, or on the winter ranges, desert ranges in the winter, and there's grass on the mountains and in the high country in the summer. And that's an economic component that, if there weren't ranchers, that resource would not be used. A lot of people argue that, well, it's not it's such a small part of this economy. Why do we continue to do it? But I think the main reason we continue is, number one, it makes sense, and number two, the people who do it it's their life. It's what they want to do. It's their passion. It's what makes life meaningful and challenging and enjoyable and also tough. But I think that when you think about the history of this area, I mean, Mr. Macquarie, he was a cowman, and back at the turn of the last century, a lot of the families in this area were cattle people. That was one way. That was a resource that we had here. We have a lot of rocks and a lot of dust, and not very much water. But we do have a resource where cattle can range out to water and cattle can range out to feed, and that all started in the 1860s when those first families came to St. George and Santa Clara and Kanab and Hurricane and all across this southwestern Utah corridor, and it began with the herds of the Church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, herds, the tithing herds that people would pay tithing in kind, and those herds needed to be managed, and so the Pulsifer family, the Terry family, other families in those early years, they moved out of the St. George area northward looking for grass, and they found a lot of great grass up in the Pine Valley and north into Enterprise, and then west into Shoal Creek. And that's where those early church herds was up in that Enterprise and west down into Shoal Creek. And a lot of those original ranches started out of that. But in the meantime, there was Pipe Spring, and there were cattle at Pipe Spring, and a dairy at Pipe Spring. You probably read about how the building of the St. George Temple and all the dairy products that came from Pipe Spring in the 1870s to support that effort. And that began the ranching on the Arizona Strip. And what you have here, you have operators in southwestern Utah. You have operators just across the line in Nevada, where our family heritage is. And then you have this amazing, amazing story on the Arizona Strip, which is the however million. I used to know all the statistics of however many million acres it is between the Colorado River and the Utah line, and how then the river dissects the Utah line. So everything from House Rock Valley over at Navajo Bridge all the way across through the Kaibab and the Uinkrets and all the way down, and then you come into our area more south of us at Mount Trumbull and Bundyville and then Parashant, and then you finally come to Arizona. But all of that area south of St. George was prime. Yeah, I say was, is prime grazing land. Maybe not as prime some years as others. But it's interesting that most of those historic ranches on the Arizona Strip were owned and operated by people who lived here in St. George or in Kanab or in Orderville or all along the southern Utah corridor. And those men and women lived in the towns, and their ranches were out on the Strip. It's the same model today. All those the Atkins, the Esplins, the Gardners, and many others. Those are just the three that always come to my mind. But there's so many that they live here in town. They might be a member of the city council. They might be a member of a stake presidency. They might be a big business person, the founder of SkyWest Airlines or whatever. But their ranch is over the line in Arizona, and that's where they've historically operated and where their heirs still continue to operate. So you have that whole Arizona Strip story, and Lorene and her husband, Steve, they are part of that generationally going way back. And I just thought it would be fun if, Lorene, if you, and I didn't want to put you on the spot, and she wasn't planning on this, but maybe you could just share a few thoughts about all of this right now.
You know, I'm a rancher, I'm not a speaker.
Here, let me get out of your way. I'll come over here.
We ranch on the very, very farther west part of the Arizona Strip. My husband's grandfather bought it in 1948, and we're on 4 generations on our ranch right now. Both sides of my family were ranching families. My grandfather and his family were in Grafton, and they ran cattle up on Kolob and out at the Gap. I don't know if any of you are familiar where the Gap is or out to that area. But that's what they did for a living. They came to Grafton in 1863. My mother is Bundy off the Arizona Strip. She and her parents, her grandfather, they ran cattle, and her parents ran at Paws Pockets, and then up on Mount Trumbull. I have always been very interested in brands because my mother and I would make Bundy brand quilts and then auction them off for their fundraiser, and they did very well. I just don't have any to show you, but that is probably one of the reasons that I got so into looking at brands. And I didn't bring any, but I have books of brands that I've written down. And probably the earliest ones I can find are 1850. And this one in particular here belongs to my husband. And he was the first bishop in Salt Lake. And his name is Carlton Lewis, and that's 1850, and that was his brand. And that'd be his third great-grandfather. I just find a great interest in being able to connect families and heritage in these brands. It's amazing to me how they connect and who they are. Brands are a very important part of our livelihood because they identify cattle. If you were to travel with cattle, you know whose they are. If you sell cattle, you know who they belong to. It's only been about a month ago that we brought in a cow. Unfortunately, she had a brand on her and an ear tag, and we knew who to call, and they lived in Orderville. But that cow was probably 20 miles from where we ranch. But they were very grateful because they didn't have any cattle out there right now, and they were able to get her and bring her home. Anyway, like I said, brands are very important to me. I've done a lot of research on them. I did this several years ago we go up to a Grafton reunion every year because 2 sides of my family came from Grafton on my dad's side. This is my grandfather right here. I don't have any good pictures of him doing cattle, but this was a picture of him at a movie set up in Grafton in 1947. That movie, I'm trying to think of the name. They named it for, it was 100 years from Salt Lake. They had come to Salt Lake. And this is a movie Horses on right there. This was him out at Gooseberry, which is on the way out to, hold on a minute, Apple Valley, out in that area. Him and all his brothers had bought a little ranch out there for a while. And I still have that saddle, and I'm very glad to have it in my house. Okay. I think I've probably covered everything I wanted to say. I want you to know how grateful I am to be able to work with land and cattle and horses. It's a wonderful life. I myself don't think there's anything better than grass-fed beef. And if you haven't had real grass-fed beef, you're missing out. So,
Awesome. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Lorene.
I have a question.
Yes.
Are people still using the branding irons? Because the cows that I see would have been out and doing in buggies side by side.
Here's our old
They have ear tags.
And now
Yeah.
we have electric brand, and this is so much more safer and easier on cows. I also have aluminum brands that we do on our horses, and they use dry ice and alcohol. And you shave your hair, you put it in there, and it grows out white. It's wonderful.
And that's a good question. The brands are still used, and they're legally used to identify cattle. But now ear tags are becoming more for a direct identification.
They're visible, but an ear tag can fall off.
Yeah.
So really, the brand is the main thing.
The brand is the legal mark, but the ear tag gives operators, makes it much easier to, because there are different colors of tags. There's a visible number on the tag, and that. So, good question.
You keep track of all of these cattle on the computer? Oh, okay. Take your chance. Okay.
Really
So
old
you-
way.
Okay, you have record of all of
They
Th-
run out
this
of
one.
hard sections, so yeah, we kind of have an idea where they're going. We're out there twice a week, every week, or, you know.
that? You live here in town?
I live in Beaver Dam. I live on a farm and a feedlot in Beaver Dam.
Yes, sir.
All these brands that are shown, once the registered, that brand stay in possession of the registry.
Yeah. Yes, until such time as it is sold or transferred to someone else. And a lot of brands just kind of die out, but they're still in the brand book. You know, it's not like you wouldn't come in and copy an old brand. Every new brand needs to be original and registered. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. This lady back here, and then.
My uncle had put the brand in, of course it was very, very hot. And he hung up the branding iron, and then he didn't get the therapy back. He branded himself. I'm behind it.
Oh my goodness! Wow, thank you.
I just wanted to ask, how old are the calves or the cattle when they're branded? When you buy, if you buy adult or already grown cows, you brand them when you get them. But when do you brand your calves, Lorraine?
We bring them in the fall, and they're born in the spring, so they're probably 7 to 8 months old. They're big. They're not really big.
Yeah.
I figured they would know about that
And but from the old days, the way cattle were run and things, I mean, it used to be that you weren't able to have your, know where everything was and when it was. So a lot of times if you came upon one of your calves, you would just brand it on site, and so that that's done. But now everything is done in a very methodical way and in a timely manner.
Are there plans to shoots?
Some use chutes, some use roping, some do it the way it was done 100 years ago. Some do it with really sophisticated chutes.
And I'll tell you a little story.
Sure.
So, when we first got married, I thought, oh, I'm a cowboy, I can do this. And we tried to brand one of those calves out there by roping it and making a fire. I knew he was trying to kill me. So now we bring him in and put him in a chute. Everything's so humane and so easy now. It's unbelievable.
That's awesome.
Very, very easy.
Sharon?
Number two, can you speak to the grazing rights issues that you're facing, and also how the legislative matters issues in the world?
Well, I hate to get into the politics part of it. We hope we can stay there forever because.
Lorene, will you stand up, please? You're fine. Oh, you want this? Okay.
Okay. I really needed my husband here today because I get really mean and political, but, you know, I think we're all doomed. I mean, you make up your mind. You want to eat bugs and manufactured food? If they take us off the range, that's what you have to look forward to, in my opinion. And you know what? I love beef, and I love grass-fed beef. What other better way is there to utilize grass, you know? It comes, and if it weren't eaten by cattle, it'd burn up, you know? I think our government really needs to come around. I do not believe that my cows are destroying this planet because they fatulate, you know? I can't go there. I just...
Okay.
The second part of the question was, is there really an issue of adolescent youth?
You know, I hear about it more and more all the time. Fortunately, we haven't been affected, but I have heard of people being affected by that. And it's unbelievable. They just come in and take like their whole herd. So I know it happened in northern Utah and Colorado. I've heard of it happening.
But Lorene doesn't have to worry about it because nobody can get to where she is. I say that in jest, but you guys would not believe the country that the Laytons and others ranch. It is the most amazing, incredible landscape on earth, and the whole world would be there if they could get there. Are you within the Parashon?
Yes, we are part of the monument.
They're
So they can't monument. We've already been there. We're there.
Their allotment is inside the Grand Canyon Parashon National Monument, which is, of all landscapes across the world, it is one of our national monuments. So, and it's interesting. It's a national monument, but you can't get there. And if any of us wanted to try to get there, we'd want a pretty stout vehicle. We'd want a couple of spare tires, and we would need a pretty stout constitution to do that. So I think in that way, maybe, although being remote could also make you more susceptible in some ways to rustling scents, except that they're out there a couple of times a week. So that's that's good. Yes. Sorting? Well, so along with ranching, you have all of the related sports and activities that go with ranching. Lorene and I rodeoed in college together. We were college rodeo competitors. I rodeoed for Dixie College and for BYU. In fact, I was on the BYU rodeo team the last year. They actually had a team. I don't know if that reflects anything on me or not, but we actually had a really great year that year. But rodeo is the way, the ultimate way that ranchers and horse people and cattle people kind of translate their passion into competition. And in a couple of weeks, the National Finals Rodeo will be in Las Vegas, 10 days of just the most amazing rodeo that you could ever imagine. And along with that, there's team roping. It's amazing that all the parallel universes that exist. I mean, right at this moment, there's within 20 miles of where we're sitting, there are softball tournaments, there are soccer tournaments, there are quilting, whatever. There's this, there's that, there's the other, everything you can imagine. And nobody from any of those knows anything about what's going on in the other one. They're in their universe. And also within 20 miles from here, there are cattle sorting events, team penning events, team roping jackpots, all kinds of things going on all the time. And there's different associations, there's different organizations. The people who are horse people and who are passionate about cattle and livestock and the horse life have many ways to be involved in competitions. And Lana's talking about our cousin Brent, my cousin Brent Hafen, who last year he participated in the team penning national series in Texas and won his division. So we have a world champion team penner in our family. But again, most people don't even know those things are happening, and yet they are. They're a part of the ongoing, amazing side by side traditions and cultures that occur all around us. I need to begin to wind this up this morning, and I wanted to do that by sharing a really special memory from my own boyhood as it relates to horses and cattle. It's so wonderful, Lorene. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so glad you've shared what you've shared. Lorene's mother, Nathella Bundy Wood, is one of the greatest women I've ever known in my life. I wish she were still here with us, but boy, did I love to just sit down and hear her tell a story. And she's the one who told me the story about her brother, Lincoln Bundy, who was born and grew up at Mount Trumbull in Bundyville in the 1920s and 30s. He along with his cousin George Iverson were the two sort of budding young cowboys on that part of the Arizona Strip. That they were already legendary in their teens. What they could do and how they could do it. And Lincoln was Nathella's he's slightly older than your mom. Big brother. Yes, of course he was her big brother, because she idolized him as her big brother. And when they heard President Roosevelt over their radios out there, clear out there on the Arizona Strip, when they heard him say that the day of infamy, I'm trying to remember the sentence. December 7th, 1941, a day that will live in infamy. They heard those words live out on the Arizona Strip on their radios. And what did boys like George Iverson and Lincoln Bundy do? They immediately headed to find out where they could sign up. And they both wanted to be pilots, fighter pilots. And George was 6-something, very tall, and Lincoln was more built in such a way that the Air Force would bring him in and made him a fighter pilot. And George ended up in the Marines and ultimately ended up on Iwo Jima and is buried in the cemetery in Hawaii. And Lincoln went on and flew P-51 Mustangs, and D-Day +1, he was flying over northern France and was shot down. And nobody knew anything after that. It wasn't until the 1990s that the Bundy family found out the whole story of Lincoln. And it's a story that I wrote in a book called Far from Cactus Flat, which is out of print right now. But it's a story about two cowboys who went to war and didn't come home. And both of them, their dream was to come back to the Arizona Strip and be cowboys. And both of them would have been. They'd be in their late 90s right now. And both of them would have been that carried on their legendary lives as cowboys. But Nathella, Lorraine's mom, Nathella, to hear her tell these stories, she's gone now, but to hear her tell the stories about her brother and those people they've always just been very close to my heart, even though I'm not directly related. But the one way that I am related is that when I was 14 years old, I got recruited along with my dad and several other cowboys in St. George to go out on the Parashant and gather the last remaining cattle in Twin Canyon. The Mathis family had the Parashant Ranch since the early 1900s, and they were finally, in 1970, they were selling that ranch to the Gublers and Fries in Santa Clara. And before that transaction would occur, they needed to get all the cattle out of there, which was a total impossibility. They were Hereford cattle, and we know how wild Brahmers can be, but a wild Hereford is exponentially more dangerous, I believe, than a wild Brahma. Brahma's supposed to have that in them. Herefords aren't supposed to, but when they do get it, they're as bad as you can imagine. And there were several dozen cattle down in what they call Twin Canyon that goes right down into the Colorado. And it's two branches that come together, and when you're at the bottom, you look up them, and they're exactly twin canyons. But down in the bottom of that were all these Hereford cattle that needed to be gathered out of there before this sale took place. And I have a little video here that I'll share with anyone who wants to gather around the laptop afterwards. But on that, during those 3 days when I was 14 years old, I spent all day and all night. We were down all day in the canyons, the nights at the Wildcat Ranch, Buster Esplin's place on the Parashant, with some of the most legendary cowmen that were still alive at that time, including Reed Mathis, who lived just down here on First South, and Buster Esplin, who lived just down on 600 South. These are cowboys who lived in town, but they were legendary figures as cowmen and as cowboys out on the Arizona Strip. And several others. I won't try to name them all right now. But we went into the canyon the first morning, and I was just becoming a roper at that time. And my old horse Judge was just a great, great old horse who could fly across those washes and those ravines and those bushes. And as a 14-year-old, I roped some of those Hereford cows. We caught one bull down in there. The cows we would fork on a tree and tie them to a tree, and then eventually, when we got a little group, we'd bring him up out of the canyon. But there was one bull that we knew we would never get out of there. But we got him roped, and I'll end with this. We got him roped and down and tied, and then Reed Mathis, who was in his 60s at the time. I thought he was an old man, but he was he was younger then than I am now. But in his 60s, he flew up that horse. We built a fire, and he took 2 iron rings off his saddle, and threw them in the fire. And I'd never seen before that, and I've never seen since, running irons being used. But Reed Mathis always carried running irons on his saddle, rings about that big around, that at any time that he needed to brand something, he could build a fire, put those rings in the fire, and then put 2 sticks in and fork them in that hot ring of iron and brand the cow. And I actually have a video of him doing that, because my uncle was there, Uncle Phil, with his 16 millimeter camera. And it's just a quick little clip, but you can see the little running iron, the little ring, and you can see him branding the cow and the bull. And it was the brand was the VT brand. V as in Virgin, T as in Tom, a V and a T. And it's one like Lorene shared with us, some of these brands that go clear back to the 1870s. It was one of those original brands over in the House Rock Valley on the Arizona Strip. And as B.F. Saunders came more, he was a big operator, as he came more toward the Parashant, that VT brand was the brand that kind of carried through. And the Mathis family owned that, became owners of that VT brand and owned it at that time. And so I saw that iconic brand, that historic brand, being put on a bull in 1970 when I was 14 years old. And now, since the Gublers and Fries bought the Parashant, they ran that with the VT brand until 1985, at which time the government expanded the Grand Canyon boundaries and basically traded the Gublers and Fries out of their ranch there. And so that old Parashant ranch no longer exists. But the VT brand is still held by Bill Gubler in Santa Clara and is used on certain parts of his allotments. And so I just wanted to share that, because that's the one connection I have to the earliest generations. And to see Reed Mathis, this 65-year-old man, hop off his horse and brand this bull is something I will never, ever forget. So thank you. We made it under the hour, and we had questions. So I think we're good, but if we need more.
Just curious, if you ever partook in the cattle drive that went from like Parashant to the railhead in Modena?
Before my time.
Okay.
But my dad and others talk about those drives coming up through town and Bluff Street, yeah, which was an old cattle trail at that time, where Bluff Street is, and all the way up through, and then on up to Enterprise and across to Modena at the trailhead. There again, everything in this area is so. I mean, it's a dry area, it's a huge area, it's a rough area, and it's a long ways to the railroad. Any others?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, appreciate that. Well, Lorene got to do the grass-fed beef commercial, which I endorse completely. And I didn't come here to sell books, but I do have my new Christmas book if anybody's interested. But that's not what I'm here for. So.
And they've got several others over here, and we're happy to show them to you because you'll be delighted if you own them. So we're going to use the one that you dropped. Did you?
Oh, right here. Yeah.
So my apologies. My phone was on do not disturb. So, but we appreciate him and Reedy for coming up from Beaver Dam today. That's a good ride. So we appreciate you coming. We're going to announce what next month is. You want to announce?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Ruth Snarr. Nancy and I are the ones that are in charge of getting all these programs. Next month we're having a lady by the name of Judy Call. And if you ever wanted to know about the, I can't think of, that ran the sheep. I can't think of the name of all of them. I've just drawn a complete blank. What is it? Anyway, she does a fantastic job of telling you about the Paschal sheep. That's what they were called. They were special sheep, that they would use in the temple back when Christ was born, and how the star came about in the Bible. I mean, it's just everybody thinks she's Jewish, but she's not. And she I'll tell you, it's a fantastic program, and that's next week in this
Next month.
now next month.
On the third.
Yeah.
Double check the date up there.
Yeah.
So we're prepared. December 14th, back to back.
Yeah, back to that.
Really, she did it before here.
Yeah.
You haven't seen it. You will not be sorry.
Yeah, she came last year, and we have had so many people request her to come back. So anyway, that's here next month.
Thank you again for coming. We appreciate it. And thank you.
I have a sterling suggestion.
So I'm going to buy this one.
Okay.
And I didn't ever get a free Christmas one from our cousin reunion.
You didn't get yours? Then I've got yours right there.
Okay. And then also I wanted to talk to you about the dedication. Did you want to run that video?
Oh, the dedication of what?
Of the temple, but I'll talk to you in just a minute.
Okay.